Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name is Mike Guardabascio. I'm here hosting the Long Beach Post live chat for the day. Very pleased to be joined by Chris Caluppi, the Executive Director of the Teachers Association of Long Beach. Chris, thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Thanks for having me.
So, if you're joining the chat right now, I'll drop this reminder a couple different times. Whether you're watching on Facebook or Twitter, go ahead if you've got questions for Chris about teachers and what the efforts to get into the school year here are. Go ahead and leave your comments, and those will get filtered over to me, and I can ask them for you. But let's just start, Chris, with the fairly obvious question. You are the head of the teachers union. You've got the biggest union in the city. It's the biggest workforce in the city. How are teachers doing? How how are they feeling? I know this is not a relaxing summer, but how's everything going?
Not a lot of relaxing. And I'll have to correct you. I'm not the head. So I'm the executive director, which works under the president and the executive board. So our organization is run by teachers, by elected teachers, and I'm their employee and more of an emissary to the district and working with labor relations. There's a lot of uncertainty right now. We do have two of our units open, so our CDC and Head Start teachers are currently working, and that's all driven out of the health department. So the health department feels that those circumstances created in those classrooms with those amounts of students, that they can safely operate. But of course, they are very worried. I mean, today we have seen the largest spike in hospitalizations for COVID. We're going in the other direction in terms of flattening the curve. And so folks that are working right now are really worried. We're monitoring that situation closely. We do know the JCC, which has a child development center, had to be closed down because of COVID. So it's a very fluid situation. When we turn tracks to our K-12 system, so we did have that announcement last week by the superintendent that we would be looking at opening in October. And then a few days later, the governor came out and essentially said, if the county is on a watch list, then you're not going to be able to open, and that we will have to go to an online learning platform. So it's difficult. I mean, we certainly are working with the district and trying to come up with safe ways to get back to normal, but we're not headed in the right direction to get back to normal. If we were in a space of optimism where we could see the curve was flattening, there were less positive, less infections in the community, then I think we could be more hopeful about schools returning to normal. But right now, we know that school will go to an online learning platform for the first day of school, which is still scheduled for September 1st.
Right. I was about to say, just for those who are tuning in, and this is the first, piece of our education coverage they're seeing, September 1st, school will start. It will be online only through at least, is it October 4th or 5th?
Well, that's what the district wanted to do. And then the governor said, if you're still on this watch list, so that'll be the big question. If we're still seeing mass infection and hospitalizations, then we're not going to be off that watch list in LA County, and we won't be able to reopen in October.
Yeah, I would say as a parent of two young kids, it's not exciting news we're seeing coming across on the cases list right now, for sure.
I have a sophomore and I have a seventh grader, and it is worrying. I mean, you worry about how this is going to impact them. But we also know that there are simple solutions. If we would get behind and be united on this battle and do the simple things that have been asked, by wearing a mask, by making sure that we keep social distancing, that we could get some traction and really get back to normalcy. Until that happens, it's really hard to an environment where children are going to be safe and the adults that serve them are going to be safe. And how many lives are we willing to risk to do that? We've seen how opening states too early has impacted the spread of this disease. And I know the district, as well as the county health department, and every teacher is watching the news going, is this going to get better? And then on top of that, the anxiety of trying to figure out online learning. So they are looking at different types of online learning platforms. It will not be the same type of distance learning that we saw from March till June. So that is something that will be different. All the details are still being worked out. Fortunately, for a large system, we're starting a little bit later. We have other large systems in the state that are going to open before us, so we will have that opportunity to look at how are they managing and are they able to operate, and hopefully learn from them while we all learn how to try starting a school year online.
Right. Let's we'll jump into a little bit of the fall planning, because obviously, as you can imagine, that's what we're having questions kind of pouring in on. I know that you guys are still sort of in the middle of negotiations with the district, and probably a lot of this will be finalized in the next couple of weeks. But for right now, I think parents know that the district is committed to grades, right? And as you said, it's going to be a very different experience for your teachers and for the students when we get into the fall than it was in the spring. What other changes have been committed to, or do you feel confident will be different? Whether that's live teaching, whether that's the kind of platform that students and teachers will be using, or is that all kind of still in flux at the moment?
It is still in flux. We just did a pilot last week of a couple of programs that are being used in other school districts, sorting that out. A lot of it is trying to figure out how this is going to work. I mean, we still have to look at the infrastructural piece. Is our schools going to be able to run that? Is our systems going to be more stable for our workforce to remain at home? Questions like that looks at safety. It's you're looking at it through the lens of safety, and then trying to figure out how are we going to operationally provide education, and it's a huge lift. I mean, even if we were to have a much more robust live instruction, that doesn't necessarily mean that the students are going to be engaged. So you could run a longer day on Zoom or through WebEx, but our little first and second graders going to be able to have that kind of attention to be able to sit in front of a computer. And is that something that's going to be healthy? The greatest challenge that I think the community has faced, that maybe teachers were taken for granted, and maybe they really saw them as more of childcare, and now they're faced with, I have to deal with my children all day and try to educate them and try to have connectivity through a computer. And of course, there's going to be some frustration, right? We've been dealing with some cabin fever for a number of months, but education is hard, and being a teacher is hard, and then trying to spin that up from a brick and mortar into a live stream or into an internet world is something we're all learning simultaneously. So it's kind of like flying an airplane while you're building it at the same time. Yeah, we're hoping to certainly get some answers to the public as soon as possible. But on the other hand, you almost need to wait and see how this evolving pandemic is affecting things. Where are we going to be 2, 3, 4 weeks from now in this pandemic, and how are we going to operate? Are we going to be in another closed situation locally with the county or with the state? There's just so many things that could impact that. So telling people things that I know that they want to know to tamp down that anxiety right now, it would almost be a little disingenuous, because 2 or 3 weeks later, we're in a whole different set of circumstances. We do know for sure it'll be online, and we do know there'll be new platforms, but that hasn't been completely vetted out. We'll hope to get that information no later than the first week of August on what kind of platform. But some of this is also the process of including the Board of Education and them having an opportunity to look at what's being proposed by both labor and management, and having them approve these new programs.
We'll jump back into, this is a little bit of a tricky live chat for me, because on the one hand, you've got information that, parents of 70,000 students are interested in. And on the other hand, you've got the city's largest workforce, which is its own, obviously, significant group that bears some coverage. And we'll jump back into the fall plans in a minute. But, one question I just had for you is, what are you guys doing? Is there a concern about just sort of like basic mental health of your union? That teaching is obviously a challenging profession, but there is usually some predictability, right? When the school year is going to start, when it's going to end. You can lesson plan out for most of that. You usually have your schedule by this point in the summer that you can kind of go, this is what my 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. or whatever looks like. And so much uncertainty, for the teachers has been injected into this upcoming school year. What are you hearing from the people in the union? I mean, is everyone just really stressed? Are you guys providing services to help with that?
So, I mean, the services is we're connecting them with their health insurance to get that mental health. I mean, yes, people are in all different states of just, it's heartbreaking. Getting calls from people who have really suffered, and the staff has been great, and we try to take those calls, but it's hard. Teachers with 20 and 30 years experience have called, and they feel like they don't know what they're doing,
Right.
and they don't feel like they're being respected, yet they're trying. Sorry, I get a little emotional, but it's been really hard fielding these calls and not really being able to give them an answer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's, that's very understandable. And then you've got the flip side where it feels a little bit the typical structure of a union where the more tenured people know more what's going on and are more comfortable in their profession. And because of the technological aspect of this pandemic, all of a sudden, maybe a fifth-year teacher is much more comfortable than someone who's been teaching for 35 years, right? Because some of the
Absolutely.
technology is more
That's
native.
complete reverse. So now the experts are the youngins that we don't have a lot of. I mean, people need to keep in mind that we had layoffs in 2010 and 11 and 12, and a lot of our younger force was laid off. So we have I want to say our average age is somewhere in the late 40s in terms of, and I'm in my late 40s, so I still can remember the AOL accounts. I can still remember, some of those big transitions to going online, and I've kept up to date, but some of our folks haven't. So yeah, it's the reverse calls of there are younger teachers who are enthusiastic about online learning, trying to figure out how to make it work. And then there are those veteran teachers who, they're Luddites. They still have the flip phones. They didn't have, home computers. And so on March 13th, when we were sent home, it was like, oh, geez, how do I do what I have done successfully for decades, do in an electronic space?
So there's all school districts, all of these cities, it's sort of made up of the administration of the school district, the teachers and employees, and then the students and families. And there are three kind of distinct groups with different interests, but the overall interest is the same, right? That everyone wants the schools to be open, the teachers to show up, the students to show up and get a good education. An intersecting point of anxiety, I feel, there is exactly what you just talked about. There are teachers in your union who are stressed about, how do I get onto Google Classroom and do what I do effectively because I don't know the technology. And then there's parents who are frustrated where maybe they have a student in high school where their first three teachers of the day are whizzes with technology and doing this stuff. And then the fifth period teacher is asking students for help on how to open things up or whatever else. So what are you guys doing, or what is the school district doing, or is that a joint effort to?
It's really a joint effort. And that's, to speak about the conversations of mental health. I know our teachers are freaked out because they haven't really been able to unwind. Typically after an end of a school year, they're reflective. They think about what they have done successfully, what they would like to do differently. And they haven't had that space. They went off, and now it's the anxiety of what's going to be coming in the fall. Not knowing if we were going to open, whether or not we were going to have PPE. Now we know we're going online. I mean, there's a little less stress just knowing there's something. Like, okay, we know we're opening and now we're going to go to online. But there's just an earnestness about teachers. They want to be prepared. I was one of them. I used to teach fifth grade, and I would come in 2 weeks before school started and spend hours and hours getting my room ready. That's what teachers think about when they are thinking of their next school year. So not only are some of them are teaching a different grade level. So some principals move people around at different grade levels. Now they've got to learn how to learn a new curriculum and do it online. And so there really hasn't been a break from them. I know some of them have tried to take a break, but there's not a whole lot of options in terms of going out and finding things to do that they would consider safe. Some are at high risk and are really sheltering in place. So it's been, do your staycations, but absolutely access mental health. That is something that is so important in this time, because we are, experiencing ourselves and experiencing our limitations. And if there's not a vent, we're going to see more and more fatigue in the system.
So specifically to the, for parents and for the teachers, reducing that anxiety, what does the training look like if, say, I'm an older teacher in the school district, I call you and I say, Chris, I've won these awards and these, I've had these great, feedback and everything from my students, but man, I was going to retire in 5 years and I was hoping to write out the email thing,
Right.
What are you guys doing? What is the school district doing to make things easier for that teacher? And then also obviously for the students that teacher's teaching, who are probably more comfortable with technology, that they're getting more of a baseline level of technological expertise from their teachers.
So the baseline answer is they are going to make a decision on what platform that they're going to use. And once they make that decision, then there will be trainings that will be required for teachers to take. And that's always, training is always a great word. Well, what does that exactly entail? And how is that going to work? And is that going to be effective for everyone? But there will be those opportunities. So there will be professional development. There will be access. Once they determine what platform they're going to use, there should be access built into that. Absolutely. I mean, my wife is a teacher, and I would see her trying to juggle this new world and also trying to teach the parents how to access that, because it's not only just the teachers that have experienced this digital divide, but many of our parents. I mean, when you're dealing with folks from such a diverse community that may not have internet access or may not have a computer, and trying to walk them through, this is how you can get access to be engaged and to be a student as best you can in this environment. So it's a challenge for the teacher to be brought up on those skills, and it's also going to be a challenge for parents to be brought up on that. And that's something I think we'll have to jointly work on with the district on. What are we providing the parents to then engage on these platforms and train them, so that the time isn't consumed by parents having to train the parents, or time isn't consumed by teachers teaching parents how to be teachers. The parents can access a resource, so it's much less frustrating, and it's easier for them to support their kids in a home learning environment.
That actually was, I've asked a couple of the questions I've asked have been reader questions. That actually just answered the one I was about to ask you, which is essentially your expectation is, you guys, the district, there's an online learning platform selected. There will then be training for teachers on that platform, as opposed to, hey, we want to teach you how to use computers generally. We're going to teach you how to be an expert on this platform. There will then be, through the district, more you're hoping than through the teachers, some sort of a training for the parents and families as well on, look, we're all learning this year. This is how you use this stuff to monitor your kids and interact with the teachers and everything else. So the answer to the question is, there will be those programs in place, but it's TBD until the platform's been decided on.
And yeah, absolutely. And I would expect that decision to be made sometime in the first week of August. The Board of Education did add another meeting on August 5th. So that would be the place that I would think that decision would be made, unless executive staff have the authority to do that ahead of time. Maybe that announcement will come out earlier. They should be able to say, block out this amount of time. And we are worried about the crunch of time, and folks are going to try to squeeze as much summer in as best they can, but making sure that there is that ample opportunity for training. And I almost cringe when you said expert, because anyone taking even 5 days of training in anything is not going to be expert. So there's going to be those divergent, there's going to be people that are going to pick up on this and are going to go running wild, and there are going to be others that are going to take some time. And I think we really need to grasp onto being a human and showing some humanity, that we're all experiencing this differently. And we're all here trying to make it work. I mean, ideally, teachers, students, everyone would like our old lives back pre-COVID. But we're trying to look at providing these services through the lens of safety for students and staff. And through that, this is what we think is going to be the best way to provide that, so that we don't continue to inundate our hospitals and potentially have another shutdown. But it's going to be a learning process for teachers, parents, and students. And to be as flexible and to be as human as possible, that there's going to be some frustrations and things aren't going to be perfect, but we're sure going to try our hardest.
I'm going to jump into a question that I think is probably more so for the teachers. I know we have quite a few teachers who are tuning into this. you mentioned, teachers, parents, students. This is an education town. There's quite a few households where all three of those kinds of people are in one bedroom or, whatever. What is, looking at the district survey data from the teachers about online learning in the spring, I believe that the number one challenge teachers said they faced was childcare for their own kids, which I think was 33% of respondents said was a frequent challenge. What is being done on that front for a teacher with a student who's now going to be home, and maybe the teacher is going to be asked to go and teach on a campus? What are you expecting to be able to offer for teachers who are worried about, their own kids during this?
So that's a great question. I think that if we really want honest feedback on the survey, that should be done again. TAL will do its own internal survey within the next couple of days, because things have completely changed. I mean, when that survey was run earlier, we were looking at an expectation that this virus was going to go away during the summertime, that we were going to see less infection. So there's going to be, I believe, a different perspective on health and safety. There's also going to be a different expectation on online. As the survey that was given really bifurcate the issue in terms of, do you want to be an online teacher, and do you want to be an online teacher at school, or do you want to be an online teacher at home? There was on that, but there was also not, it was, we know that it's not going experience. Some folks might think differently about that. So they're
that's a fair point.
They really should look at doing new data, and we'll do that as well. It's going to be a huge problem. I mean, we know this is a huge problem within the community. How do we provide childcare? We know that's a political issue that has been seeing kicked up around the country on, we need to get this economy going, and these children need to be sent somewhere. Well, that's true. We need to get the economy going, but at what risk? And how many lives are we going to risk in doing that? And so finding that balance. We have made the district very clear about that we are going to have many teachers who are going to be facing childcare issues, and not just childcare, but having that child be cared for and learn at the same time. Right. So it's almost, it's not just having someone that's going to be a regular daycare center or a childcare center. It's going to be providing supervision of students and providing that instruction. So they are aware of the problem. We've been told that they're coming up with solutions, but we have not seen something specific that would provide that solution. And I know that's not unique just for teachers. That's within our entire community.
Sure. Yeah. And I would add, I think when we've had Joe Baker on, I've always said at some point in the conversation, we'll have to make sure we have you on again in a couple of weeks. I mean, obviously this is something where there's new information, and as you pointed out, the landscape regarding the virus is changing frequently as well. We've got about 10 more minutes here with Chris. If anyone has questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. Chris, one question we're getting a couple of people asking about is, special education students and classes and teachers are obviously especially a challenge in terms of a number of services and types of teaching that really require, in-person interaction and everything. What is being done, either through TALB's advocacy or on the district side to differentiate in some way? Is it hiring of outside services or whatever in order to, try and get services to those students and families?
That's a great question, a really great question. There's many services that don't lend itself to online learning. So for instance, our Head Start unit, they have infants. There's no way to have an online learning program.
We're not strapping an iPad to the top of the crib. And
so many of our special needs students are in that same boat where there's not a great platform to have them interact with online. So we need to come up with solutions that will provide for those services. And that's a challenging landscape when you're already being told that they're going to be cutting funds for education from the state. So how do we provide these services that we know we need to provide to our most vulnerable students, but then don't jeopardize their health? I mean, that's the piece of why we're doing distance learning, is to try to keep people safe if we are then going to go, okay, well, for this set of students, we're going to then send in staff. And do we know if those staff are asymptomatic and shedding virus and are then going to infect the students, or is it going to be vice versa, where students who might be particularly vulnerable with compromised immune systems will get something from the employee coming to provide those services? So that still hasn't been sorted out. I know that they're working on it, and it is a very difficult situation, but it's one of those challenges where online learning is not going to be the panacea for every student's need.
You mentioned, it's come up a couple of times, the budget situation. I know that is sort of a particular area of expertise in terms of what you deal with. My read on it, I know that the numbers are big and scary, but my read on it was that in terms of funding from the state, that this year is largely the cuts have kind of been offset, but that 21-22 is a pretty scary year for your union in terms of the budget and possible layoffs and other things that obviously you'd prefer not to be a reality. What are your thoughts on that budget situation, and what are you telling to younger teachers who are calling you and saying, hey, as we've discussed, I feel like I'm on the more expertise side of this kind of learning, but if there's layoffs next year, I think I'm seniority wise might get laid off. How are you kind of dealing with those concerns?
So that's going to be a tough challenge, and we were already in that challenge before this economic battle. We were in declining enrollment. So people need to understand that over the last 15 years, we've lost nearly 30,000 students in this district. And that was due to the cost of housing, cost of living in Long Beach, and the declining birth rate. So we're declining on the natural. The projection before COVID was 10 to 15,000 students were going to leave our district over the next 5 to 7 years. So there wasn't going to be a whole lot of opportunity for teachers that are coming in. And we've got expert teachers that are older that are coming in that are experts in computers. It's not necessarily age. It's not being being new to the system, but the system is losing jobs. So there's kind of this doubling effect. We don't know where all our kids are. So where are all these students going to be come September 1? And then the concern about the budget. And 21-22 is the thing that keeps me up late at night. Folks need to understand that we had 7 months of good economic data. The state really didn't shut down until March. So we've had bad data for 4 out of 5 months of a regular fiscal year. We're going to have bad economic data for an entire year, and that is going to make the budget for 21-22 look really bad. Now, fortunately, we have a reserve here in Long Beach, and it's really going to be how that reserve is spent this year that's going to make 21-22 how bad. I mean, it's kind of if you're in I know a lot of folks are in a dire situation paying their mortgage out of their savings. You can only do that for so long. So we're going to have to look structurally at where all our students, did they all come back? And then how can we afford to continue going forward, knowing that not only are we losing, it's kind of in a business model, you're losing customers and you're not making any more money. Right. You're getting less money from those customers, basically. And that's the environment that we were in. If we were in a more stable enrollment, it wouldn't bother me so much. But the fact that we are losing close to 2,000 kids a year just naturally before this global pandemic, right, and we're going to be losing funding, we could be looking at a really challenging next 2 to 3 years.
I like to sort of try and end on a hopeful note. I think we could all use
absolutely.
a little more of that. One thing that I would say I've noticed, and I'm curious for your opinion, you said you feel like maybe we've all realized nationwide and in Long Beach that, teachers have kind of been taken for granted to a certain extent. Right?
I hope so. I hope so.
Well, that's, one thing that I felt as a journalist who's trying to cover this evolving education situation was, these reverse parades where the kids got to drive around the schools and see their teachers. You really saw this, I felt, incredibly emotional sort of realization that, that there is this connection between kids and teachers and families and schools, and this understanding of how necessary things are. Do you, as effectively a union in a political body, do you think there's something that's helpful from that? I mean, do you think that can carry
Absolutely.
policy?
Absolutely. I mean, again, it might be a day late and a dollar short, but it's nice to see the federal government is aligned with state and local municipalities on saying wear a mask and that things are going to get worse before they get better. So there's some alignment for the time being. And I would hope that we could bridge this political divide and do those simple things. Wear your mask, socially distance, don't put anyone in any great exposure. I mean, there's a sense that we as a nation can come through. I think of other generations, the greatest generation, where, they were in World War II. We were sending hundreds of thousands of people to fight a war in a foreign country. All of these huge challenges, they came through that. And we came out strong as a country. So there is an opportunity if we can just unite on a simple, let's think smart. Let's get our economy up and going, but let's be mindful of each other and do the two simple things that public officials have been asking us to do: wear a mask and socially distance. And if we can do that, then my hope is that we can get our kids back to school and we can get back to a normal life. But until we take this seriously and put a united front end, all hands on deck, we're not going to see this curve go down, so to speak, a bending of the curve. We're going to continue to see it go in the wrong direction.
Well, my thanks so much to Chris Caluppi, the Executive Director of the Teachers Association of Long Beach, for taking the time to join us today. I think we were able to get most of the questions people asked answered. I did a couple of them I think are going to be better suited for our next education live chat. Will be Thursday, July 30th next week. I'll be joined by Joe Baker, the incoming superintendent of the LBUSD. Some of these questions I think are better for the district than for the Teachers Association in terms of my.
Great. I'll be watching
some of those. I'm sure you will. But stay tuned to the Long Beach Post live chat series, 1 p.m. on weekdays. And as I said, I will have Joe Baker from the LBUSD Thursday, July 30th next week. Chris, thank you again so much for joining us. And
thank you. Stay safe.